This topic's going to review how to graph a parabola in the form y equals ax squared, which is very algebraic. And basically, if I'm saying I'm going to graph something in that format, what it might look like is something like this: y equals 1/2 x squared. Generally, when you're going to graph a parabola, the most basic thing you want to do is to find the vertex. The beauty of a parabola in this form, where there are no other terms, is that your vertex is always going to be at the origin. Always, always, always. So that's the point to start at. Immediately, we'll just take the example I have, y equals 1/2 x squared. We're going to just put a dot at the origin just to symbolize that that's where we're going to start. And we know that we know that parabolas are symmetric, which will help us. So if we plot one point, we can probably plot a point on the other side of the y-axis since it's symmetric vertically. I try to pick points. I try to take x values and plug them in and see what I get. I also try to avoid fractions as much as possible. So in other words, if I'm going to let x be 1, I'm going to end up with a fraction. I don't really want to plot a fraction. But if I let x be 2, let's see what happens. If x is going to be 2, I'm going to have 1/2 times 2 squared. Following order of operations, I square the 2, giving me 4. And now I have, hold on, let me erase that. That got really messy. Now I have 1/2 times 4. Well, half of 4 is simply 2. So I can plot the point 2, 2 pretty easily. Over 2, up 2, put a dot. Like I said earlier, it has symmetry, so I'm going to plop over here and put a dot there. Now I'm going to put in 4 for my x value and see where I'm at. I might go off this graph, but let's see what happens. To get my y value, again, I plug it in. 4 squared is 16. Sorry, and 1/2 of 16 is 8. So when I have 4, I have to go up 8. So I'm going to have to improvise just a little bit. We'll say that's 4, that's 7, and that's 8. So right up about here. And then similarly over here if I put in -4. And now I have 4 points plus a vertex. It gives me a pretty general idea of how steep it is. Sorry, my iPad and myself are not connecting too well. That's my fault. But you can kind of get the gist of it. And that's kind of the best way to go through and plot it. Is I always get the vertex and then pick some points around the vertex, around the x value of the vertex to plug in. Let's try another one. For this guy, let's try y equals 5/4 x squared. Okay, so again, the vertex automatically is going to be at 0, 0 because if you plug in 0 for x, you're going to get 0 for y. So if you're not sure how come that goes, it just does. So we plotted 0, 0. I'm also going to avoid x being 1 again, because just quickly in my mind I'm thinking 1 squared is 1, which is going to give me 5/4, which is fine. It's just a little messy. If I'm working on Alex, I know that Alex will plot the point for me, which is fine. But with my own shrimpy graph here, 5/4 is going to be a little awkward to be exact with. So I'm going to put in 2 for x. So 5/4 times 2 squared. Again, order of operations tells me to do 5/4 times 4. These guys cancel out, and my y value is simply 5. So I go over 2, up 5, and plot that point. Since it has symmetry, I'm going to hop over the y-axis and plot that point as well. And again, I can probably stop here and just put in my graph. If you're working on Alex, the next thing that I would suggest you plot would be 4. I would put in that, and you'll end up with 5/4 times 4 squared, which is 5/4 times 16. When you do some reducing here, you'll end up with a 4. 5 times 4 will give you 20. So I can't plot it on this graph because it's too small, but if you did want to plot a point of 420, you could definitely do that as well. That's probably your best bet. Let's try one more. Alright, let's also try y equals, how about 1/4 x squared. Again, this is still in the form of y equals ax squared. As we said earlier, the vertex is always going to be at 0, 0. I love that. And then I'm going to just plot some points, and I'm going to pick some points that hopefully will help reduce my fraction out to a whole number. So for x, if I put in 2, I'm going to end up with 1/4 times 4, because that's 2 squared, and that's going to actually give me a y value of 1. So if I plot 2, 1, there's my point. Scoot over the other side of the y-axis and plot the same point. I'm going to put in 4 now, and that would give me 1/4 times, let's see, 4 squared is 16. When I reduce, that will give me 1 times 4, which is 4. So I'm going to plot 4, 4, which is about here. And if I scoot over here, it's going to be 4, negative 4. And again, once you have all your points plotted, you can just kind of sketch it in, probably a little bit better than I'm doing with this big tipped stylus thing. It's just kind of unwieldy. Not that I'm an artistic type person anyways. But that's your best way to graph a parabola. If they want more than, if they want some more than a couple points, because if you can find x values that will agree with your a value of 1/4 if it's a fraction, just kind of plopping it in so that you'll get some whole numbers out. If you don't get whole numbers and you're using the Alex software, they will plot those odd fraction ones for you, so you're all good with that. Alright, I hope this helped. Thank you.